This lesson goes with section 9.1 in your text, and the first thing we're looking at here is that there are many different ways to write the same number. So what's given here is a table. In the first column should be the simplest form of a particular fraction. So you'll notice that in the first 3 rows I gave you a fraction already in simplest form. Down below there are going to be some fractions that you need to simplify. For example, in this 5th row down, I told you that one equivalent fraction is 2/8. You can simplify that to 1/4. Further down below here, I tell you one equivalent fraction is 4/6. You know to simplify that to 2/3. In the second column, you're going to write a fraction that's equivalent to the simplest form one shown here. So for example, 1/4 is the same thing as 2/8. Here it says another equivalent fraction, and you could write any other equivalent fraction you want. You could write it as 10/40. All I need in both the second and the third column are 2 fractions that if I simplified them would get back to what's in the first column. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to write what is the decimal equivalent of this fraction. And it's worth noticing that I can take any of these 3 fractions and I can put them in my calculator. I can take the numerator divided by the denominator, and they will all give me the same decimal equivalent. In this case, it's 0.25. So whether it's 1/4, which you know is 0.25, or 2/8, or 10/40, those all have the same decimal equivalent. They're all 0.25. Then it says, write this as a fraction that has a denominator that's a power of 10. 10, 100, 1,000. And 0.25 is 25/100ths. So I could write this as 25/100. Now I will say, if the decimal form that you get is a repeating decimal, then you can skip this very last column. It's very difficult to write that as a fraction that has a power of 10 in the bottom. Is it doable? Sure. Is it really hard? Yes. So in some of these, for example, if we skip down to here, 0.57, I've given you the decimal form. Well, it's pretty easy to write this as a fraction that has a power of 10 in the bottom. This is 57/100ths, so I can write this one as 57/100ths. And from there, I can move into some equivalent fractions in there. So one thing I might want to know is this in simplest form? It is. There are not factors that go into both 57 and 100, so that actually is in its simplest form. To make equivalent fractions, well, one thing you could do is you could simply multiply the top and the bottom by the same number. Maybe I'll multiply those both by 2, so I might have 114/200. Maybe I'll multiply the top and the bottom by 10. I might call that 571/1000ths. So now I have 3 equivalent fractions that all have the same decimal equivalent, which is 57/100ths. Now you finish the rest of the table.